High energy equals high income. I'm going to say that to you again because I want you to be clear on it. High energy equals high income. I want everybody to be clear on something. This is the good shit, not the bullshit. How many of you guys have been to meetings where you feel as though you are going to fall asleep within 5 minutes of the speaker speaking? Anybody besides me? Say aye. Aye. I'm sorry, high income equals high what? So let's try that again. How many people have been in meetings like that? Say aye. Aye. Okay, yes. And I've been in meetings like that too. And our intention today is really to equip you, right, with what you need in a changing environment. Because has anybody besides me noticed that the environment has changed dramatically? Anybody besides me? Oh, yeah. Yes, 100%. So I need to really have a plan in place for when the environment changes. And to illustrate my point, let's imagine for a moment that we were all going to go on a trip together, right? And let's say we decided to go to the beach, okay? Now the beach is a very specific environment, is it not? And because it's high income equals high what? Energy. The beach is a very specific environment, yes? Yes. Yes, it is, and it requires a very specific strategy. Because environments require strategy. Now let's say we want to really enjoy our time at the beach. What would we need? What would our strategy be? What would we bring with us? Sunscreen. Okay, sunscreen. What else? Umbrella. What else? Towels. What else? This is awesome. Snacks. What else? Drinks, I heard. Yeah, okay, what else? A book. What else? A bathing suit would be good, so you're not naked. Yeah, that'd be fucking good. What else? Surfboard. What else? A friend. A friend. Aw, a friend. Aw. Everybody say, aw. Right? Laptop so I can write some deals, do some deals. Let's go. So you notice, we all know that strategy, do we not? Anybody besides me ever screwed that strategy up? Ever forgot the sunscreen and ended up burnt to a fucking crisp? Anybody besides me? Yeah, how many times does that happen? Maybe once or twice, and you learn your what? Lesson about that particular strategy. Is that accurate? Because environments, very specific environments, require specific strategies. Yes, high energy equals? Okay, good. You guys are getting with the program. This is good. I like this. Now let's imagine that we were going to change our environment. We go skiing. That is a completely different what? Strategy is required for that environment. Is it not? Yes. So what would our strategy be then? Warm clothes. Warm clothes. What else? Snow boots. What else? Jackets. What else? Gloves with a little hot shit to keep your hands warm, right? What else? Sunscreen. What else? Goggles, right? Lip balm. What else? Mitten. Okay, so do you notice that we have strategies for particular environments? Is that accurate? Yes. Exactly. Now, what would have happened if we tried to use this strategy for the beach for the strategy for skiing? What happens? A sad story, Peter says. A very sad story. You are not going to be a happy individual. Do you understand? So here's my question for you. We all agreed that the environment, because real estate and the market is an environment. And, newsflash, it changes. But what happens if I'm using the same strategy for a different environment?
A recipe for failure.
Oh yeah, and I watch you guys do it. I watch you guys bang your head against the wall using the same strategy over and over again for the beach when you should be using a strategy for skiing. And then you start to think there's something wrong with, no, that's not true. You're just using the wrong strategy. Would you think there was something wrong with you if you forgot sunscreen? Would you say I'm a terrible person? No, you just screwed up the strategy. And the same is true here. How do I know that this is true? When I first started selling real estate in 2006, that was a very specific economic environment. Now, was anybody here actually selling real estate at that time? Show of hands? Okay, just a handful of people. So most of you guys have no idea what I'm talking about. So let's go to the people who actually knew. Vicente, you were selling real estate at that time?
Yes.
What was that environment like in 2006?
Crazy.
Crazy. And what were some characteristics of it?
Out of control, fast, loud, litigious, foreclosures, short sales.
Well, so here's what's interesting. In 2006, that was the lead up. So 2006, multiple offers. 2006, relative cheap money. 2006, prices going up 18 to 20%. 2006, the lenders in the room had no standards. They were loan skanks. Okay? You know what you could actually do back then? You could say, hey, you know what? I make $150,000, and they wouldn't even fucking check. Oh. That's fucking crazy. Like, now that we say that out loud, you're like, who thought that was a good idea? But that's what that environment was like. And I was brand new. I lived in Gainesville, Florida. I just got my real estate license, and there were these things called condo conversions, where they put lipstick on a pig, and they sell it to people, right? They take an old apartment, put a little lipstick on it, put some new curtains, some new carpet, and sell it. But that's what the environment was giving, and people were buying them hand over fist. So what do you think I sold a lot of? Condos. Pigs. But pigs, exactly right. Got no problem selling a pig. Okay? Then the environment changed in 2008. Oh, that was a totally different environment. What prompted the environment to change? Yeah, greed, really, right? Everybody got greedy, right? Bankers, individuals. We like to blame the bankers, but we were the ones taking the loans to buy the shit. So everybody got greedy, and it collapsed, right? What happened to all those buyers buying condo conversions? They disappeared. Now, can you imagine if I kept using that strategy? What would have happened? I'd have a different job right now. I wouldn't be standing in front of you. You see, Charles Darwin says it's not the fastest, the quickest, or the strongest that survive. It's the ones that are the most receptive to change. But do you know why you guys don't want to change? Because you get certainty from doing shit that you used to do before. Does that make sense? It makes you feel safe. Because money has an addictive quality, and because of it, you get addicted to the way that you receive it. So you keep going back to the same well. I hear agents saying now, I need to get back to the basics. Now, there's some basics like prospect, lead, follow-up, go on appointments, negotiate deals. What they're really saying is, I have to go back to work. I fucking really like not having to work and make a lot of money. How many people like that? Was that cool? Yeah. But what they're also saying is, I got to go back to the shit I was doing before. But the environment changed. Is this clear to everybody? Say aye. Aye. So what did I do to deal with that environment? Because it radically changed. Right? I went from I was 26 years old, I made $150,000 selling these little condo conversions. I thought I was the man. And then it just disappeared overnight. So I went out and I got access, because you're one relationship away from finding the opportunity. You're one relationship away from changing your family tree for the rest of your life. Jose just mentioned that. He's also changed my life, because I wouldn't be standing here in front of you if it wasn't for him. Make sense? Okay, so I got access to the best coaches, the best trainers, the best mentors. I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own money. And now I no longer worry if the marketplace changes for myself or the clients that I coach. Because I know in every fucking market there is an opportunity. I just need to know where it is. Not where it isn't or was, yes. You see, the law of finding says you'll find something when you look for it where it actually is, not where it isn't. If you're looking for it in expireds right now, hey, guess what? It's not there. Your inventory's this low. How many expires do you have a day? How many people who prospect? Three. Is that enough leads to do the deals you want? No. So if you keep banging your head against the wall, what is that a recipe for? You should probably try a different. Oh shit, you guys are getting this. Let's go. He's getting it. That's a nice watch, brother. So I got access, right? And now I no longer worry about that. And I believe that everybody in this room, guys, fully and completely, the way I know the sky is blue and the grass is green, is that everybody in this room with the right strategy, if they knew where to look, and the right systems and the right skills, you can dominate any marketplace, including this one.
Let's go.
Okay? I spent the last 17 years of my career selling 2,000 homes, with 80% of that business being listings sold. You can clap that shit up. Let's go. And that was because I shifted with the marketplace as it changed. And I changed my strategy. Okay? So what me and Jose are going to do today, because we were thinking about this, just giving you guys a listing presentation, that would have been fantastic and amazing. But I started to ask myself, what is their biggest challenge right now? Your biggest challenge right now is having appointments to give a listing presentation on. Do you understand? Yeah, she's like, amen, hallelujah, right? That's what the challenge is. So what we're going to talk about today is a few things. One is I'm going to show you in a moment specifically what's happening in your marketplace, why it's happening, and approximately how long it's going to persist. Okay? Because hoping and wishing and praying is not a strategy. It's a weight loss program. Okay? You'll end up having to get another job. Like, that's what it is, right? The second thing we're going to do is Jose's going to do a fantastic, marvelous job of breaking down where the opportunities for listings are. Is that something you guys want to know about? Say yes. Yes. Hell yes, because this guy's going to do over $1.8 million in GCI. Oh, poor Jose. Anybody feel bad for him? I don't. Because he knows where to look. He shifted his strategy. So we're going to give it to you. We're going to open it up and say, hey, here's specifically the sources that you should be looking at so you can find inventory. Because is your problem right now buyers? No. What is your problem? Do you understand? Then the third thing we're going to do is we're going to go through, briefly and quickly, the structure of a listing presentation, what to say and how to say it, because at a lot of these types of meetings, they give you this generalized bullshit information, like it's all mindset. And I'm like, you're an asshole. Because it's not all mindset. If I had a powerful mindset and I went to the beach with no sunscreen, no water, no snack, what's going to happen? I'm going to burn and I'll dehydrate. It's not only mindset, right? So then we're going to go over specifically that tactical information on what to say and how to say it, and the structure to increase the probability that when you find that opportunity with an 80 to 85% likelihood, you'll be able to execute on it and get the contract signed. Who's up for this? Say aye. Aye. Good. So let's get into it. Let's go. So what's happening? In Ventura County right now, I know you guys work in all different counties. I was here exactly 1 year ago. Who was in the room when I was here a year ago? Hell yeah, look at that. Repeat customers. That means this shit is dope. So a year ago, when I was here, the active listings on the market was 1,500. Now the active listings on the market is just under 1,000. That means inventory's going down. Interesting. Which means you're all competing for? Do you see what's part of the problem? Yep. Now, the other thing that's happened, look, is that not only is the inventory down, but when I was here last year, the sales were, it doesn't have the number there, but I know what it was. It was about 863. Now it's below 500. So that means the inventory is half of what it was before, almost. It dropped by 40%. And the sales almost got cut in half. Are you starting to realize why a lot of you guys have anxiousness, tension, and worry about what's going on? Look, she's like, yes. Do you have a camera? Have you been watching me? This is what's going on, guys. And no amount of fucking cheerleading is going to change it. No amount of fucking, David Goggins is going to change it. Do you understand? Cold plunges aren't going to change it. Podcasts aren't going to fucking change it. It's what it is. So I have to deal with it. Because your ability to produce outcomes that are favorable in your life is directly correlated with your ability to deal with reality. Most people don't deal with reality. I had a mentor tell me one time, he's like, you want to know what reality is? Take all your clothes off and stand in the mirror. It's what it is. There's no negotiating that, right? It's just what it is. Look at everybody like, oh shit, that is what it is, huh? So this is what's happening, right? And simultaneously, what's also happening is 90% of all homeowners have a mortgage that's less than 6%. I want you guys to understand something. You will look on Amazon for 3 hours to try to save $50 on a product. You're trying to convince people to purchase properties where their payment is double. This is the reason why part of the reason why there's a shortage of inventory, right? And look at the stats. So 92% of homeowners have a mortgage that's less than 6%. It's almost all of them. 82% have a rate below 5%, and 62% have a rate below 4%, and close to a quarter less than 3%. Does it make sense why we went from 1,500 to 1,000 active listings? Okay? Now, the question is how long is that going to persist for? Anybody notice that mortgage rates are now above 7%? I was here last year and I said that's going to persist. People are like, meh. I remember having conversations with Tim, and we'd have these nuanced debates about, these highbrow conversations about the economy. I'm like, bro, I'm telling you, interest rates are going up here because this is what happened the last time this happened. It's like, oh, well, I don't know. Here it is, 7%, over 7%. And with that super high degree of probability, that's going to persist for the next 12 to 18 months. Right? There's a high degree of probability that when comes election time, because everybody wants your votes, that'll come down. Right? Look, people who are seasoned are like, yup. But that means we have to deal with this for how long? 18 months. You see, if you're sitting wishing and praying it's going to be away in a month, it's not a good strategy. Okay? So, and as we look at this even more, is that mortgage rates are unlikely to drop below 6% by the end of the year. They're going to stay up this high, guys. They're not going to change. So the only people in these environments that are going to do something, what's the one thing they all have in common? Either buying or selling. They have to. Not like, hey, you know, I want some more like backyard for my dog. That's not going to cut it. They need to be experiencing pain. What would be examples of pain? Divorce is painful. What else? Death. What else? Loss of job. What else? Huh? Debt. Can't afford it. What else? Right? Death, divorce, job relocation, moving to assisted living facilities, retirement. Do you understand? Those are the only people that are actually definitely going to do something. Now, the other thing I want you to be clear on as to why you're experiencing what you're experiencing and why you're feeling what you're feeling is we are projected to have 4.2 million sales in the calendar year of 2023. Last year we had over 6 million. The last time we had 4.2 million sales was 2009. There was only 990,000 real estate agents. Today we have 1.6 million. This is the real estate Hunger Games team. That means 600,000 extra people are chasing what? The same opportunities, guys. Do you understand what's happening here? This is why you're feeling what you're feeling. It's why you're experiencing what you're experiencing. But I need you to know and understand, the best businesses are started in this time. I started my business in 2006 and 2008 it imploded. Why is it the best? Because it forces you to become faster, quicker, stronger, more disciplined, more consistent. Right? It forces it to happen.
Got it. So for those of you that were selling real estate in 2009, 10, 11, and 12, would you guys say that that was a good time to be a real estate agent? 2008, 9, 10, 11, or 12? How many of you guys would look at the real estate market at that point and be like, man, I want to be a real estate agent. I'm excited about getting into the market. There's no better place to be a real estate agent, 2008, 9, 10, and 11. How many of you guys would say
this isn't a trick question, guys. I know we're all realtors here.
Most people would say no, right? But it depends who you ask. So had you asked Michael Delgado, REO agent back then, was it a good time in 2008, 9, and 10? Michael would have said it was the best time to be a real estate agent. Had you asked Irma Arreguin with Century 21, was it a good time to be an agent? She would have said it was the best time because they had the right strategy, right? So the people that were succeeding in 2004, 5, 6, 7, it reached the point that if they didn't change their strategy, they didn't do well, you know? So in that time, if you look at the amount of foreclosures that there were at that time, you notice that the foreclosures started to happen. So if you wanted to succeed at that time, it was very likely that if you had a bank-owned account or an REO account, you were doing phenomenal. If you chased pre-foreclosures, you were doing phenomenal. At that time, almost every listing that was a standard sale on the marketplace was expiring. So if you chased that strategy, it was a good strategy. But what happened in 2012, 13, and 14? What happened to the people that had the REO accounts? They dried up. And what happened to a lot of them? Did a lot of them stay top producers? No. Why? Because they didn't switch the right strategy at that time. So at that time, there was that same point that we're witnessing right now. It's like, okay, do we need to change our strategy? There was very few people. There's this agent called Stephanie Vitaco, and she was a big REO agent, and she stayed a big agent. But a lot of the REO agents, nothing. And what I heard from a lot of them is the REOs are gonna come back. They're gonna come back. I've been talking to people and they're gonna come back. And even now I hear them, they're coming back, because that's the only strategy that they know. They don't know any other strategy.
I think you were with EXP previously, and then went to a different firm and then are making the kind of pivot back to EXP. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that journey and what caused you to really take a closer look at this.
Sure. Yeah. Well, one, thank you both for having me on. I really just appreciate that opportunity. And thank you so much for being persistent too. So really, yeah, I started off with EXP, or not started off with EXP. I was with EXP before I was with the brokerage I was previously with for I think what 5 years, 6 years. Really, honestly, the whole goal was I was with another guy in a group, and his name is John G. He taught me quite a lot of stuff, and as a newer agent, he definitely bring me on his wing. And but my goal was never to really help other agents. Just to be straightforward with you, it was more about selling property. I mean, because that's all I knew about real estate, is that I need to get some checks in, I need to sell some property, and whatever awards you want to deal with, whatever stocks and all that different stuff. I really didn't dive into it at all. And so so I was there for like I said, for almost 5 years. Then I made a transition once I was able to really start producing on my own, to this other brokerage that I previously was at. And we had a year there, and then I came across you guys' videos. It was literally I want to say the beginning of last year is when I started listening to the videos. And I'm sure you probably heard this before, Aaron, but what's it called? When I first heard you, I was like, dude, what is this guy? Who is this guy? And so, but overall, it was just like really the skills, the actual like tactics. That I was like, dude, this is not just get you motivated to go pick up the phone. This is actually stuff that actually helps. And it did. I mean, literally last year we were able to do the most business I've ever done in my life on the listing side. And so once you guys opened the opportunity for me to join in, it was kind of hard to want to transition. I think I shared this with you, Aaron, is that, or actually, it was actually Jessica yesterday.
Yeah.
In regards to, I didn't want to be one of those realtors that hop brokerages and was waiting for the next thing. Once I started getting a groove and knew that, hey, I'm the one that actually had to produce, I didn't care what brokerages I was in, because I knew I was going to be successful. And so really going into and learning more about you guys and what you offer, and then obviously doing one-on-one coaching with you kind of just exploded my mind. And still, as you know, it was a little resistant, right, for the change, just because we had already made a pivot. But lo and behold, thank the Lord, we were actually here now. So I'm super excited. I'm ready to go. And I'm should have did this a long time ago.
Yeah, I love that, bro. And I appreciate your testimony. And, we do hear that frequently with regards to kind of media being helpful as a mechanism for helping people tactically, right? Like, because, I like to play around and say most people teach mindset because they can't teach tactics. And being able to take that information and then apply it to the marketplace and have it actually work, because you're somebody who has built your business and grown your business in the same way that I did, which is outbound, reaching out, talking to strangers, setting appointments, pre-qualifying the appointments, going the appointments, presenting, handling objections, closing, and then getting price adjustments if they don't sell. And you just were aware, like, hey, this data and information is really helping me to do that more efficiently. Is that right?
Exactly. Yep. That was really it. And I actually, before that, there was, another person that was out there, but it was just like, the same authoritative way of just like, hey, we know best. We're the realtors. You do what we asked you to do. And so in this current marketplace and these current, consumer, that doesn't work anymore. So
No.
it was just really awesome to see once I actually bought into the system, and actually put my head to the ground and learn to do what I was being taught, and actually practicing that and putting that into practice. It's when we actually had a lot of success.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned something that's super interesting, which is, previous kind of, I don't know, strategies or approaches were very kind of patriarchal, like I know you don't, very like authoritative, right? Specifically what causes you to believe, right? And what I'm aware of is that what you're saying is essentially that approach was much more efficient in an environment where people didn't have access to information. So in other words, like there was an actual time, and I know it's wild for me and you to think about, is there was an actual time where nobody had any access to any real estate information. So in other words, like there was like, they didn't know what their neighbor's home sold for. They didn't know what was on the market. They actually had to consult a book that would be printed once a week, right? So if you went in authoritatively, yeah, that would probably be pretty palatable and probably be pretty effective in an environment where nobody has access to information. Well, what I'm aware of, and is that has radically changed. Now consumers have access to more information than probably most agents do, and they're reviewing it all the time. So to utilize an approach that was built for a different environment, like you may have some kind of success doing that, but it's not, you're not relating and communicating with consumers in a way that's in alignment with the world that we live in today. Is that what you're saying essentially?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, it really was. I mean, I think you even mentioned that, or I think Jose even mentioned that, is that they probably know more about their house than you do.
Yep.
They're always checking it out. They're always doing it on that. So to come in there saying, hey, this is it, that's not the way to win it. And obviously that's not the way that, we've had success. So yeah, the things that the elite builders have been teaching, the skills have just been super crucial, especially in this current market. I think, if the interest rates were 3%, I think we could do whatever we want to.
Yeah.
But we're not there anymore. And so we're at 7%, 6.79, I think I checked this morning. So a whole different ball game. But yeah, coming at them, as a team, coming at them as, hey, we can do this together no matter what you choose. We're going to do this as a team. I mean, that was just a whole different perspective. And coming from my background before even real estate, and, in coaching, I was like, what? It's like clicks. Like we're helping them, we're guiding them to get to the result that they, when it comes to expires, where they first actually wanted to get to. So.
Right. So, and I love that you made that connection with coaching, because in that environment, the goal is to guide and lead. And the best way to help, and this as a coach in athletics, and it's true in any kind of guidance position, is the goal is to help people to self-discover. That's how you get buy-in. That's how you get, because you're going to argue with me, you'll argue with my information, but you'll never argue with your own. Right. It just requires, it's a higher, like I personally feel, I'm curious to see what you think, but like, I personally feel that leading with authority is the lowest form of influence.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know there was another option. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's really what it is, because we feel like, hey, we got a license and we're the ones that, have access to the MLS. We should be able to tell them that. But no, yeah, that mindset change of, hey, we're going to help us discover what the best thing is for you. That's just been really a big part of the success. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then I know another thing that we worked on is you got good at generating revenue. I'm sorry, Jose, did you want to say something? You froze, bro. I don't know if you're doing like the...
No, I was just going to ask, like, what are some of the things that he's picked up in the last couple of years that he's felt that have had a positive impact in his career? Because he said 2024 was his best year ever. And for a lot of agents, it wasn't like that. For a lot of agents, it was actually the opposite, meaning that it's one of the worst years of their career. For me, it was one of the best years, and I'm on pace to have one of the best years in 2025, which is insane. But I was just curious to see what changes you have made, or what are some of the things that you've picked up over the last couple of years from working with Aaron?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the major big thing was actually practice. Actually practice. One thing, I actually said this at my event the other day, and I did give you credit for it for sure. But was that, amateurs practice till they can't get it right. I think Jose actually said this too, is amateurs practice until they can get it right, but professionals actually practice until they can't get it wrong. And that's just like, what? Like, I've been just practicing to get it right. Like, but being a student of the game and actually embracing it as like, this is my profession. Like, I need to be an expert at this, and taking control of that, right? To be straightforward with you, before even listing property, I was heavily buyers. Like, it was literally anybody and everybody. I talked to everybody. So I grew up in San Antonio, so kind of everybody knew who I was. And once I became a realtor, it seems like it was just super easy for me. But when those interest rates changed, it was just like a whole different ballgame. Hey, I got to actually go do something. But learning the skills, learning actually how to work as a team with the seller and actually have and kind of align those goals together. Like, hey, I'm only here to help. I'm only here to actually serve you, and being okay actually with not what is it called? Not being okay with the outcome, like not being attached to the outcome.
Unattached. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And so, the skills in itself, the practice, right? The content and the value that you guys have put. I mean, Jose, I don't think you even know too. There's been so many things that I've learned that it was just unreal. Like actually, I remember specifically, and I think I even told you this on the court, after I scored a point on you. What we call it was that
a point on me.
Yeah.
the coming soon campaign, bro. Like literally that locked up a person that was waiting 2 months to actually get a signed actual listing agreement right then and there. And it was after the fact that I actually left the listing appointment. And then I heard that on the video that you put on there. And literally I called him back up. Hey, I just want to let you know we have a coming soon campaign. I forgot to mention it. Would you be willing for us to go ahead and just get the paperwork signed so I can actually get a lot more people interested? Boom, and got it done. It was just like, wow. So, I mean, literally there's like endless amounts of things that I've used and really implemented. But just having the resources out there like that we have now, I like, and forgive me, I'm actually learning to say we now, that
That's
we
right.
have out
That's
there
right.
because it's just been super valuable. But like I said, just the way to talk to people, just the way to not after an appointment, we're actually here to find out if we can even help them out. Like it's okay if we don't get the appointment. That to me was a big thing too, is that, hey, I was really eager just to get in front of them and then find out, hey, they're not actually ready to sell. I was like, that's just waste of time, waste of energy. And so, yeah, the scheduling, just the role playing, really just becoming a professional and expert at our game.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I'm hearing a combination of things. Hey, Jose Salazar, he said I'm live streaming it. He goes, yo, 1 point is diabolical.
No, but he scored more than 1 point. But the way
I
he
know.
said it after I scored a point, I just thought it was funny.
Of course you did, bro. Of course. So this is great. Well, I'm hearing a combination of things. One is there's some mental maps, right? Because one of the best things you can get from somebody who's a little bit further down the path is just access to the way that they think, because the way that they think allows them to do what they do.
Exactly.
So one of the mental maps is like, hey, I prospect to find problems.
Mm.
And to your point, you're like, wow, dude, that's I'm going to show up differently. I'm going to communicate differently. My intention is going to be different if I'm prospecting to find problems. And once I discover that you have a problem that I have a solution for, then I'll offer you the solution versus being solely squarely focused on setting an appointment. So there's some, and then the other mental map about, am I going to go pro?
Mm.
What I like to share with people regularly is in my MLS system, there was 20,000 agents. There was only 100 that did more than $20 million in volume.
Wow.
So you have 20,000 people competing for 100 jobs. So I would propose those people are pros. So if I wanted to be a pro, what would my schedule look like? What would my practice schedule look like? Right? So am I going to go pro? And making that decision where I think previously, and I've shared this with you, like you're a solid person, like human,
Thank
right?
you.
I know that you have people's best interest at heart. Like you asked me on a text, you're like, yo, would you go to war with me? I'm like, yep. I'm like, would you sit in a bunker with me? You were like, yep. So I know that you're like a solid dude. And in the past though, you were kind of just relying, let's say like on like talent maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
And maybe maybe just being like a little charming. So you're like, yeah, like I could just get by on that. And then you recognize, oh man, there's a whole nother level when I take this seriously and I go pro.
Well, not only that, I also think it's like when you combine, like some people are naturally gifted and naturally talented and they have people skills. But when you combine that with like skill, then that's the winning combination. Like, so like I had an agent that worked on my team that was unbelievably talented. And what I would tell him, I was like, you know what you remind me of? And he's like, who? I'm like, Vince Carter. I don't know if you guys remember Vince Carter.
Yeah.
The guy was an animal, like had like a
crazy.
vertical higher than, like so much natural talent. But when you think basketball and you think about like Kobe Bryant or you think Vince Carter, who had more natural talent? I would argue that Vince Carter had more natural talent. But why is Kobe a legend? I'm like, he took the skill part to another level in comparison to that. So I think that a lot of people get by and do well, and you can do very well with the natural talent and natural ability, but there's a lot more risk with that strategy. And there's also a lot more, a lot less rewards as well too with that strategy.
Yeah. Well, and I think you end up plateauing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for you, Andrew, it's really. I shared this at the summit that we were at, which you were there, and I appreciate you making the trip. I remember going and shadowing Quentin, who partnered with us, and he sold 5,000 homes in his career, and I was like 27 at the time, and he gave me a picture of the puzzle. So in other words, if we were if I sat down with you and I'm like, hey guys, we're gonna make this puzzle, and I dump out a 10,000 piece puzzle on the table, the first question you would ask me is, I want to see the box so I can see what it's supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So here you were doing your thing. You're probably the top agent in your geographic, like you're just doing it, right? And then you got a picture of the puzzle of what that next level looks like.
Yep.
That's exactly right. So it's just, and you had the courage and the intestinal fortitude. Yeah, maybe you needed a little bit of nudging, which is fine. I'm happy to do that. And so is Jose. But to actually say, yeah, like that makes sense. And I'm going to continue to move in that direction. So that way I can be in proximity with people that are that picture for me. And then what's going to happen, and it's already beginning to happen, is you become that picture for others. Welcome back, Novello Nation, to another episode of the Aaron Novello podcast. I have with me a luminary, legendary, right? Friend, mentor, teacher, the original Gremlin tamer himself, Mr. Rick Carson. Thank you, Ricky D, for taking the time to be here with us.
Oh man, it's a pleasure to be here. Really.
Sure.
I mean, I know anything you do with quality. And I know how much you care about your constituents. So to be asked to be part of your deal here it's an honor, Aaron. I really appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. I appreciate you in very many ways. As you know, I've expressed that to you on multiple occasions. So I always do my best to bring people to the platform that I think can add tremendous value. And you definitely fit that category. And for those who don't know kind of the story of how I came in contact with Mr. Rick Carson is, it was a stage in my life where I was maneuvering kind of props and players outside into configurations that please me. I was doing well in business. And if people were to look from the outside in, they would say, hey, like, everything's going great. However, internally, my internal experience was not that enjoyable. I was kind of plagued with doubt and fear and worry and anxiousness about continuing to produce at a certain level, scared that I would lose my skill or ability to be able to continue to do it. And I was on a trip in Amsterdam, and I saw this book behind me on the table. And I asked my sister-in-law about it because she was reading it. She said, well, I have like a issue with flying, a fear of flying, really. And somebody told me to read that book. So I opened it up, and I wanted to read this to the audience so they can hear it, right? This is what struck me right directly in the center of my chest. It said, this book is not intended to guide you to enlightenment, to internal bliss, or to riches. It will, however, help you to enjoy yourself more and more each day. It is simple and practical, and I hope that reading it brings you much pleasure. And when I read that, Rick, it was like the sky parted, like from up top. Like, somebody's talking to me, man. This is exactly what I've been looking for, exactly what I need. And then I reached out and, began a relationship with you. I just called you out of the blue, and, here we are all these many years later. So I guess I'm wondering, because I know, and I've known you for a long time, I've had the good fortune of getting to know you, not only as a teacher and a mentor and a friend, but I know that Gremlin taming came from like your own personal inner journey, right? So if you'd be open to
Absolutely.
give us the kind of abbreviated version of how that came to be.
Yes, I will. I'll give you an abbreviated version. When it really came together for me is I was having to do something that it was the right thing to do, but I didn't want to do it. And it was actually about 3 a.m. I won't go into all the details, but I was at a place where I worked. I supervised some of the best counselors I've ever supervised, some really wonderful people. But in any event, I was there and I just had I don't know, the tiny mouth, touch me, I'll bite blues or whatever you want to call it. I was pissed off. And there were I was sitting there by myself, 3 a.m. in this house where we it was a poly drug abuse program. But anyway, I was sitting there and I was just disgruntled. And I knew, well, there are people I can blame. There are circumstances I could certainly get all agitated about. But none of those people are here. I'm here by myself, feeling all this stuff. What the hell is going on? So I started doing some work with myself. And a duality emerged where it became very, very clear to me that, and an image emerged, actually. I don't mean like a vision so much, but keep in mind, Aaron, this is well before the movie Gremlins, or I don't even know that I'd ever thought about a gremlin, but I started seeing in front of me a gremlin. So, but the real learning was about that duality. But the gremlin thing kind of stuck in my head. But because of that duality and seeing so clearly that working through that was more than just a dialogue between, your gremlin on one shoulder and something else on the other and all that. It was really a matter of those two forces confronting themselves in such a way that there was a wholeness that came out of it. They merged in a way. And it wasn't a cognitive thing. It was very physical. It was experiential. So Aaron, I was 29.
Were you really?
I'm 76 now. That was a long time ago. So, but anyway, the image stuck with me. But within just a few days, with families I was working with couples, with individuals, it didn't matter what somebody presented with. It became very clear to me eventually when the real work would get done is when we got down to that duality. And all of a sudden it was like, and I think I may have shared this with you at some point, it was like, wow, I see how this works. Okay. And then, so gosh, several years later, I sat down to write. In 1983, I sat down to write the book. I just had weekends to write. Anyway, started to write it as a metaphysical book, started to write it as a book for therapists and coaches. And then I just thought, shoot, I'm just going to write it for everybody. And that damn image of the gremlin kept coming up. So I called it Taming Your Gremlin. And that's how it all happened.
That is so awesome. And I really appreciate your authentic kind of expression of that experience.
Yeah.
So I wrote down a few things which were pretty interesting. The first you notice, which is natural and normal, like rain and sunshine, that you were mad about something.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you also became aware, like, you're stewing in it and you're having these conversations with imaginary people.
Yeah, I wasn't having a big time.
Yeah. And then you started to kind of, go within and kind of notice this duality. And I heard you mention that more than once. So if you'd be open to it, just briefly kind of describe to the audience, when you say duality, what do you mean?
The conflict between one part of, I'll say me, of anybody, and another part. Within every one of us is an incredibly beautiful, beautiful experience. In the initial Taming Your Gremlin, before I did the revised edition, I called it the natural you. I've also called it life in a book, just life. Prana, Ray, Chi, Ki, the primordial vibration, Elan Vital, God, the kingdom within. It doesn't matter what in the hell you call it, because it existed before the word. But there is a thing in there, something infinite, that came together, in my case, and yours, and everyone who's with us now. That infinite thing came together with something finite, our bodies. I'll speak in the I frame, my body, something infinite, something finite, came together to create the entity that answers to my name. Okay? Those two things are together. They're connected by the breath. So there's that beautiful thing, and it's beautiful. The best thing about it is how wonderful it feels. I'm going to say a little more about it, and it can guide us. It can tell us, once you're in touch with it, who to hang out with, what and who to get the hell away from. It's a beautiful thing. And there is something else within every human being I've ever met. So I guess it could change tomorrow, but so far, across the board, there's another side that exists. Call it yin, yang, whatever you want to call it, but there is a part of us that is out to squelch that vibrant soul. Let's use that term for now. To squelch that vibrant soul. That's the duality I'm referring to. Okay? So in order to resolve that, it's not a matter of getting rid of this other part. Doesn't work like that. It's a matter of really witnessing that other part. And that takes practice. That takes uncommon awareness. But at the point that happens, Aaron, there's a sliver of light that develops between the natural you, that heart of hearts, that soul, and all of that stuff. Well, when that sliver of light is there, there's just a feeling of clarity. It's not like cognitive information. It's like, oh, I see. There's what's real, and then there's this other stuff. Now, we'll say that let's call that other part your gremlin, okay? I'm a firm believer, Aaron, that any feedback I get from anybody probably has a little truth in it for me, even if it's very critical feedback, including from my gremlin. So I'm going to ask myself, what do I need to learn from this? You know? Okay? But that's all the thinking I'm going to do about it.
Yeah.
What do I have to learn from this? And is there any action I need to take?
Yes.
Okay? And let it get in there. But the method, as you know, the gremlin timing method is very precise. It's very elaborate. And as you well know, it takes practice. You got to practice with it.
Practice, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you were a quick study. You are a quick study, Aaron. And it's like such a pleasure to work with you for that reason. You know, you really, when you dive into something, you really dive in.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And what I'm aware of, it means a lot coming from you, the Gremlin tamer himself. I'm also aware that it came from a place of kind of desperation in a way.
Yeah.
Was the
I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah, so the pain was so strong that I got to a place of like, hey, whatever it takes. I remember when we first connected, I was like, hey, Rick, you don't know me very well, but like, you know, I'm pretty good at like maneuvering props and players in the way that I like, but I don't know how to enjoy myself.
Right. I remember
like,
quite well.
And you were like, yeah, Buckaroo, I can help you with that. So it came from a place where the desire was really strong. Now you said something here, which I really, I wrote down, I jotted it down because it jumped out at me. So conceptually understanding those two kind of pieces, but you said witness, because I'm aware that the tendency is, myself included, without kind of a practice, without awareness, is to want to try to like push against, but I know that creates resistance itself. So if something's happening and you start to push against it, or you try to cut it out, you try to say like positive affirmations or positive things, right? And
this creates a new duality.
I tried that to like the fullest and it doesn't work. So talk about that.
Well, I'm really glad you're pointing that out, because that's the way it works. Yeah. You know, a key element in the method is what I call simply noticing. Now, keep in mind, when I wrote Taming Your Gremlin, the whole beautiful, really beautiful Buddhist movement was not big in the West, and there was no term like mindfulness. And so I had to come up with a term that described the experience I was having. And for me, I just thought, well, hell, I'm just noticing, paying attention. So I use the term simply noticing, and that's a primary piece of the method. It's a little different than just mindfulness, because it's mindfulness in action. What you learn to notice, it's pretty easy to notice what's going on around you. With practice, you can notice what's going on in your body, even the subtle things. But to notice what's going on in your very own mind, that's second semester, because you're right in it. It's right up against your face.
Yeah.
It's a veil of concepts. But as you well know, with practice, immediately, if it's one of those beliefs about yourself or about how the world works, it's probably limiting. Even if it's a positive belief, Aaron, because a belief is just an opinion that you develop loyalty to. And a lot of those opinions were in there by the time you were a little kid, time you were 6. And then you start to see the world through that veil. And it's a prejudice. It's a prejudice against yourself. Because any self-concept, I'd rather you have a positive one than a negative one, but any self-concept is limiting because you're not a concept. You're a constantly evolving mass of matter with that infinite power inside. There are no real limits. I mean, you can't, I don't think, walk on water or grow taller on the spot.
Or fly.
Yeah, damn it. That'd be a great one.
So this is good. So I wrote down a couple things and I really hope those people listening that they're paying attention and writing notes, because this is the way it is, guys.
I think always by the book,
And you're getting it right from the horse's mouth. So, what Rick is telling us is that it's perfectly normal and natural, like rain and sunshine, that you have anger or frustration or you get scared or any of these things. And the way you get through something, because you've really drilled this into my head over all of our time together, is not by going around it. You get through something by going through it. And one of the things that I learned immediately, we would, kind of do calls or do work. If I was doing a piece of work with you, instantaneously, as soon as you see where that duality is or that energy is blocked, you would like grab me by the collar, metaphorically, and push me right to it, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how you work through it. Versus trying to run away from it, versus trying to, affirm it away, versus trying to distract yourself with food or alcohol or some other kind of thing that would pull you
anything.
away.
Cabin in the woods, that longed for relationship. People have all sorts of that'll do it for me. That next degree, that hoity-toity mansion on a tree-lined street, yes, that'll do it. By golly. It's not in there.
It's not. And
I mean, it helps for a while to have whatever you want, but the thing you're looking for is within you, as you well know.
I do know this, and the intention is to spread that message as much as possible. So
that's true.
So I think I want you guys to really hear what Rick just said, because, as you know, I coach clients in a business capacity, real estate.
Sure.
And oftentimes they tell themselves a story like, what? When I sell 100 homes a year, or when I make $1 million, or when I get the secondary home out here, or when right? And yet internally, right? Even as they're kind of moving and progressing, and it's not happening in the time frame they like, or as quickly as they like, or in the amount that they like, but still producing and succeeding.
Right.
I noticed that there's it's a kind of damping down of their own enjoyment. It's almost as though they're standing guard at the gate and saying, look, you can't feel centered and at peace until.
That's how it was for you.
Yep. 100%. Now I'm curious, because you have this very amazing kind of perspective in that you've spent probably, 30 or 40,000 hours with humanity. And what I find so interesting is when you read, for those of you who haven't gotten Taming a Gremlin, get it immediately. It's a wonderful book. And the subsequent book, A Masterclass in Gremlin Taming. But in the original, you give these examples of gremlins.
Oh, right.
And what I found so interesting is as I'm reading this, I'm like, these gremlins, I know these gremlins.
Uh-huh.
How's that possible? He wrote this book 35 years ago. These are all different people, right? From different socioeconomic status, different geographic locations, different cultures, different languages, and the experience is the same. So talk a little bit about that, because I think everybody imagines that we're this super unique, kind of person, when in reality, the experience is very similar.
It is for all of us. Similar. It's not exactly the same. Keep in mind, your gremlin is your gremlin by virtue of its intention. It's out to squelch the vibrant soul that you are. people ask me frequently, Aaron, well, where does it come from? Let me make this very clear. I don't know. And I don't care. I just know that that thing exists and there's a way to tame it on the spot. So the reason I'm mentioning that, Aaron, is a lot of times people will say, well, here's one of my gremlins, or here's the other of my gremlins. Man, you've got one gremlin. Your gremlin is your gremlin by virtue of its intention. It is out to eat your lunch, but it changes disguises from time to time. And what you're referring to, Aaron, are actually different approaches of your gremlin. So I think in terms of, there are a lot more styles than what I'm going to mention, but there's sort of 5 key poisonous arrows that your gremlin uses. One, of course, is pretty obvious, is worry. The basis of that, of course, is fear. All right. So when one notices one is scaring oneself, or that one's gremlin is on the scene, you want to accentuate that fear. You want to get a sliver of light between you and that fear by witnessing it fully. And you want to separate out what's real from what you know for sure. And we could do a whole workshop just on that.
I know.
But okay, fear is one poison dart, poison arrow. Another, of course, is miring yourself in regret. But I want to emphasize the miring, because Aaron, if I accidentally step on your toe or do something I shouldn't do on this video, or I'll regret that. That's a natural feeling. But if one begins to dwell on a regret and chew on it like bubble gum, it becomes a feeling called guilt, which occurs right here, upper part of the abdomen. And everybody knows what that feels like. We don't want that. It serves absolutely positively no purpose. Some people say, well, it keeps us, will keep us in line, whatever that means. No, it's just notice it and move through it swiftly. With the regret, you ask yourself, what do I learn from this? So I just stepped on Aaron's toe and I regret that. I'm going to say, well, I really be a good idea to be more careful, and probably I ought to apologize to Aaron. By the same token, if what I do is get on my own case, which is poison number 3 here, and basically say, schmuck, what's the matter with you, Rick? Why are you always stepping on people's toes? You don't know what in the hell you're doing. You're a clumsy oaf. You can't do anything right. The whole barrage of things. That's another poison, is just kicking the hell out of yourself. It's one thing to ask yourself, what can I learn? And is there an action to take? It's another thing to beat the hell out of yourself. And there are 2 tests to know which one you're doing. Okay. One is how long it lasts. If you're sticking on a subject like that for any great length of time, you're ruminating. You're not working through it. You're not doing constructive thinking. And the other is how it feels. Constructive thinking about a mistake may not be a barrel of laughs, but there's no anguish connected with it. They feel different. Gosh, the granddaddy of them all, of those poison arrows, is trapping yourself in a concept. That's what we were talking about earlier, a belief about who you are, how the world works. I wish I had there's a diagram I use sometime, but just know the difference between a belief. It's an opinion that you develop loyalty to. That doesn't mean it's wrong, but see it for what it is. It's an opinion. Everything changes. Look at what's happening in the world right now. Everything, every cell in your body changes constantly. There's a complete turnover, I used to weigh 7 pounds, 8 ounces. I don't anymore. It all changes.
Yeah.
So
I remember you telling me that you're like Aaron, you're not static. You're not a tree. You're like a vibrant, dynamic, like alive, like changing, like being.
Yeah.
To imagine.
That's really
good.
I was just going to say that is so scary to some people, is why they cling to a particular belief system, you know, and that's okay. That's what you want to do. Just see that that's what you're doing.
Yeah,
Like,
and like you said,
I'm gonna stick with this.
that's right. And I know that I can already hear you in my voice. What you would say is like, I'm the last person in the world to tell you like, naughty, naughty, don't do that, and slap you on the wrist. Like, no, I just want to make sure that if you're doing that, you see what you're doing and you do it on purpose. Like, I'm going to box myself into this tiny little definition of who I imagine I'm supposed to be. And then I'm going to beat the hell out of myself when I don't fit it. And as long as that's on purpose, Rick Carson is okay with that.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and what I wrote down here, which I love, so you broke down, because I remember you shared that with me on a call after maybe, I don't know, 6 years of me working with you. And I was like, Rick, man, this is so good, because it's helpful for me and for other people, those different ways that people get in their own way. So for those who are listening, one was scaring the hell out of yourself. Now, my tendency in the past, that was like my Gremlin's favorite brand of magic. You pull me into the world of mine, show me terrible movies of catastrophic things happening with me as the main character, right? And that would cause physical manifestations of anxiety and stress in my body. The second one is putting yourself down. And typically the way people do that is they compare themselves to other people. I see that a lot when I'm working with coaching clients and other people, that they'll be like, oh, well, Aaron's selling this amount of homes and I'm not selling this.
If I paid you as fast as humanly possible, that was the most meaningful thing I could control for you. If you're like, what's he talking about? It takes like 3 days to get paid. It's because your bank doesn't participate in real-time payments. But if you do, and we get a settlement statement and a copy of a check, let's say in the morning, 75% of the checks